Sadie, we're done.
Ben, please.
This house, it's mine now.
The kitchen clock read 2:47 a.m., and I was counting again. 17 days since Mira last touched me, not counting the obligatory peck on the cheek before her morning meetings, or the way she'd brush past me reaching for her designer coffee mug. Real touch. The kind married people are supposed to share. I sat at our granite island, laptop open, pretending to work on a client's network security assessment. The blue glow illuminated our pristine kitchen, all stainless steel and cold surfaces, just like everything else in our marriage these days. Mira had insisted on the renovation last year. "We need to project success, Landon," she'd said, waving fabric samples and paint chips like battle flags. Success. Right. I made decent money as a freelance tech consultant, enough to keep up with her PR executive lifestyle, but apparently not enough to keep her interested in sharing a bed with me. Upstairs, I could hear her moving around. She'd been restless lately, always on her phone, always whispering. When I asked about it, she'd give me that look, the one that said I was being paranoid, possessive, pathetic. "You're imagining things," she'd say, then retreat to her home office with a glass of wine and her laptop. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the distance between us was normal after 3 years of marriage. Maybe all couples went through phases where they felt like strangers sharing a mortgage, but strangers don't usually get excited about office parties. "Landon," Mira's voice carried down from our bedroom, sharp with that particular edge she reserved for inconveniences. "Have you seen my black Louboutins?" I closed the laptop and climbed the stairs, finding her standing in our walk-in closet wearing nothing but a silk robe and a frown. Designer dresses hung around her like expensive ghosts, and she was pulling shoes from their organized shelves with increasing frustration. "Which black ones?" I asked, though I knew exactly which pair she meant. The ones that cost more than most people's rent. The ones she only wore for special occasions. The ones with the red soles, obviously. She didn't look at me, just kept searching. "Tonight's the annual gala. The biggest night of my career, remember?" How could I forget? She'd been talking about nothing else for weeks. Adrian Valahurst's PR firm threw legendary parties, and this year Mira was up for a promotion to senior account executive. Everything had to be perfect. "Found them," I said, retrieving the shoes from where they'd fallen behind her jewelry case. "Need me to drive you tonight?" She finally looked at me then, and I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Annoyance? It was gone too quickly to identify. "No thanks. Tasha's picking me up. You know how these things are? Lots of networking, boring shop talk. You'd hate it." I probably would hate it. Mira's colleagues had always treated me like an amusing pet at best, a necessary evil at worst. The guy who fixed their computers and paid for Mira's lifestyle while she climbed the social ladder, but still. It stung that she didn't want me there. "What time should I expect you home?" "Late. Don't wait up." She was already moving toward the bathroom, dismissing me. "Oh, and Landon, try not to leave your work stuff all over the kitchen. We're not college students anymore." The bathroom door closed with a soft click, followed immediately by the sound of her phone buzzing. I heard her answer in that low, intimate voice she used to use with me. "Hey, you," she whispered. "I can't wait for tonight either." I stood there for a moment, processing what I just heard. Then I walked downstairs, sat back down at the kitchen island, and opened my laptop again. But instead of working on network security, I found myself staring at a blank document, cursor blinking like a heartbeat. 17 days without touch. Weeks of whispered phone calls. A husband who wasn't invited to the biggest night of her career. Maybe I wasn't imagining things after all. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The Meridian Hotel's rooftop ballroom was exactly the kind of place Mira lived for. All glass walls and twinkling city lights. Beautiful people in expensive clothes pretending to enjoy conversations about quarterly projections and brand synergy. I'd shown up anyway, wearing my best suit and a smile that felt like armor. "Landon," Tasha appeared at my elbow, already 3 drinks into the evening. "I didn't know you were coming. Mira said you were working tonight." "Finished early," I lied, scanning the crowd for my wife. "Where is she?" "Oh, around somewhere. You know how she gets at these things. Total networking mode." Tasha giggled, the sound sharp against the jazz quartet's smooth saxophone. She's been so excited about tonight. Really, really excited. There was something in her tone, a knowing quality that made my stomach tighten. But before I could ask what she meant, I spotted Mira across the room. She looked stunning, as always. The black dress hugged her curves perfectly, and those expensive shoes made her legs look endless. She was laughing at something someone had said, her head thrown back in that practiced way she'd perfected for social situations. The someone was Chase Duval, her co-worker. Tall, handsome in that generic way that women seem to find irresistible, with perfectly styled hair and a smile that probably cost his parents a fortune in orthodontics. His hand was resting on the small of her back. I watched them for a moment, noting the way she leaned into his touch, how her fingers lingered when she adjusted his tie. The intimate bubble they'd created around themselves, invisible to everyone else, but crystal clear to me. Landon Keyston, isn't it? I turned to find Adrian Valhurst himself standing beside me, champagne flute in hand. Mira's boss was exactly what you'd expect from someone who ran a successful PR firm, impeccably dressed, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that made people lean in when he spoke. Mr. Valhurst, great party. Adrian, please, and thank you, though I suspect you're not here for the champagne and small talk. Before I could respond, a woman appeared at Adrian's side, and I felt my breath catch. Celine Valhurst was the kind of beautiful that made people stupid, tall, elegant, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. She wore a silver dress that probably cost more than my car, and she made it look effortless. You must be Mira's husband, she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. I've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope. She smiled, and it was like being let in on a secret. Oh, I never believe the good things people say. Much more interesting to form my own opinions. Adrian chuckled. My wife has a talent for reading people. It's served us well in business. And in marriage, Selena added, her eyes never leaving mine. You'd be surprised how much you can learn about someone just by watching them at parties like this. As if on cue, Mira's laugh rang out across the room. All three of us looked in her direction, where she was now practically pressed against Chase, whispering something in his ear. Interesting, Selena murmured. The jazz quartet finished their set, and Adrian moved away to introduce the evening's speakers. Celine remained beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something expensive and intoxicating. Walk with me, she said, not really asking. She led me toward the bar, her hand brushing mine as we moved through the crowd. I was acutely aware of the stares we were attracting, the whispered conversations that stopped as we passed. Your wife seems to be enjoying herself, Celine observed, signaling the bartender for 2 drinks. She loves these events. I'm sure she does, though I notice she hasn't come over to introduce you to anyone. That's unusual, don't you think? I accepted the whiskey she handed me, using the moment to study her face. There was something calculating in her expression, but not unkind. What are you getting at? Nothing at all, just making conversation. She sipped her martini, her gaze drifting back toward Mira and Chase. Though if I were you, I might be curious about why my spouse was so eager to keep me away from her work friends. Maybe she's protecting me from boring shop talk. Celine laughed, a sound like crystal chiming. Oh, Landon, you're much more interesting than she gives you credit for. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, pressing it into my palm. Her fingers lingered against mine for just a moment too long. In case you ever need someone to talk to, she said. Someone who understands what it's like to be married to ambition. Then she was gone, gliding back through the crowd like she owned the room. Which, I supposed, she did. I looked down at the card in my hand, then across the room where Mira was still wrapped up in her conversation with Chase. Neither of them had noticed my arrival or my conversation with their boss's wife, but other people had noticed. I could feel their eyes on me, see the speculation in their faces. By tomorrow, half the office would be buzzing with gossip about Landon Keyston and Celine Valhurst. For the first time in months, I smiled a real smile. Let them talk. I made it home before Mira, which gave me exactly 43 minutes to do what needed to be done. Her laptop was still open on the kitchen counter where she'd left it that morning, password saved in the browser like a gift wrapped in carelessness. The email account opened with a soft chime, and suddenly I was staring at 3 months of my marriage's slow destruction. Messages from Chase filled the screen, some professional, others decidedly not. I scrolled through them with the detached fascination of someone watching a car accident in slow motion. Can't stop thinking about Tuesday night. Your husband suspects nothing? Next business trip can't come soon enough. And Mira's responses, each one a small knife in my chest. He's completely clueless, too busy with his computers to notice anything. I've never felt this way before. What we have is real. I think I'm falling in love with you. I took screenshots of everything, methodically building my case. Bank statements showing charges at hotels I'd never heard of. calendar entries for client meetings that lined up perfectly with Chase's travel schedule. A hidden folder labeled Inspiration, filled with photos of them together, kissing in restaurant booths, holding hands on some beach, her wearing lingerie I'd never seen. The front door opened just as I closed the laptop. "Landon?" Mira's voice carried from the foyer, slightly slurred from champagne and whatever else she'd been drinking. "Are you still awake?" "In the kitchen," I called back, settling into my chair with my own laptop open to a legitimate work project. She appeared in the doorway, still beautiful despite the smudged makeup and disheveled hair. Her shoes dangled from one hand, and there was a hickey on her neck that definitely hadn't been there when she left. "How was the party?" I asked without looking up. "Good. Really good, actually." She moved to the refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of water. "Adrian announced the promotions. I got senior account executive." "Congratulations." If she noticed the flatness in my voice, she didn't comment. Instead, she leaned against the counter, studying me with those green eyes that used to make me forget my own name. "You seem different tonight," she said. "Different how?" "I don't know. Calmer, maybe? Less—" She waved her hand vaguely. "Less needy." Needy. That's what 3 years of marriage had reduced me to in her mind. A needy husband who asked too many questions and wanted too much attention. "Maybe I'm just tired," I said, finally meeting her gaze. "It's been a long day." She nodded, apparently satisfied with that explanation. "I'm going to shower and head to bed. Early meeting tomorrow with the Hartwell account." I watched her walk away, noting the way she swayed slightly, the satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She looked like a woman who'd had a very good evening indeed. After I heard the shower start, I opened my email and began typing. The message was simple, sent to the entire PR firm's staff directory. "Some of you might be interested to know what your newly promoted senior account executive has been doing on those business trips. Ask her about Chase. Or better yet, ask Chase about the Riverside Inn last Tuesday. A concerned observer." I copied Celine Valhurst on the email, then hit send. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Nicely played. S." I smiled and deleted the message. Then I transferred half our joint savings into my personal account, called the credit card companies to report Mira's cards as potentially compromised, and changed the passwords on all our shared accounts. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. The shower was still running upstairs. I poured myself a scotch and waited for tomorrow's fireworks to begin. My phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m. Mira's panicked voice cut through the morning quiet like a siren. "Landon! What did you do?" I took my time answering, savoring my coffee while she spiraled into hysteria on the other end. "Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How did you sleep?" "Don't play games with me. Someone sent an email to the entire office about Chase and me. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. Tasha says people are already gossiping. Adrian wants to see me in his office first thing." "Sounds stressful," I said, genuinely sympathetic. "Maybe you should call in sick." "This isn't funny. My career is ruined. Everything I've worked for. Everything you've worked for, including Chase." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more careful. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know about the Riverside Inn. I know about the business trips that weren't business trips. I know about the lingerie photos and the love letters and the hickey on your neck that you thought I wouldn't notice." Another silence. Then, "Landon, please, we can work this out. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "What do you mean?" I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "Try to use the credit cards today, or access our joint account. See how that works out for you." The line went quiet except for her breathing. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from her before, "You can't do this to me." "Watch me." I hung up and immediately called my sister Barb, who answered on the second ring with her usual morning cheerfulness. "Let me guess," she said without preamble. Mira finally got caught. "How did you—" "Please. I'm a cop, Landon. I've been watching that woman circle the drain for months. What do you need?" "Information, and maybe some backup." "Done. Meet me at Murphy's in an hour." Murphy's Pub was the kind of blue-collar bar where cops and construction workers grabbed breakfast before their shifts. Barb was already there when I arrived, nursing black coffee and reading something on her tablet. "So," she said as I slid into the booth across from her, "how bad is it?" I told her everything. The emails, the photos, the business trips, the way Mira had been treating me like an inconvenience for months. Barb listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with each detail. "What a piece of work," she muttered when I finished. And this Chase character, what's his story? Typical corporate climber. Thinks his expensive suits and luxury car make him untouchable. About that car? Barb grinned. My buddy Kirk works security at the downtown parking garage where most of those PR types park. He owes me a favor. 2 hours later, Kirk, a mountain of a man with grease-stained hands and a wicked sense of humor, was showing me the access codes to the executive parking level. Chase Duvall drives the silver BMW, right? Kirk asked, leading me through the concrete maze. Parks in the same spot every day, like clockwork. We found the car easily enough. It was exactly what I'd expected. Sleek, expensive, and pristine. The kind of car that screamed, "I'm more important than you," to anyone within a 50-foot radius. You sure about this? Kirk asked, handing me the bag of supplies we'd picked up on the way over. He's been driving my wife around in this thing for months, I said, pulling on rubber gloves. Seems only fair I should get to know it better. We worked quickly and efficiently. Raw shrimp went into the air conditioning vents, guaranteeing that the smell would be impossible to locate or eliminate. I keyed a message into the hood. Home wrecker in letters 6 inches tall. The piece de resistance was the used condom I'd filled with yogurt and left on the dashboard, along with a note. Thanks for the memories. M. Remind me never to get on your bad side, Kirk said as we walked away. My phone buzzed with a text from Mira. Adrian fired me. I hope you're happy. I typed back, getting there. How's Chase taking the news? Her response came immediately. Leave him out of this. Too late for that, don't you think? No response. But 20 minutes later, Kirk called with an update. Your boy found his car. I've never seen a grown man cry before, but there's a first time for everything. That evening, I was sitting on my front porch with a beer when Chase's BMW pulled into my driveway. The smell hit me even from 30 feet away, a nauseating combination of rotting seafood and desperate cologne. Chase climbed out of the car like he was walking into battle, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. The keyed message on his hood caught the porch light, and I raised my beer in salute. Evening, Chase. How was your day? You think this is funny? He stormed up the walkway, his face flushed with rage and humiliation. You think you can just destroy people's property? I think you destroyed something of mine first. Seems like a fair trade. He reached the porch steps, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to hit me. Then Kirk stepped out of the shadows beside my front door, all 6'4" of him, and Chase's bravado evaporated. Problem here, Landon? Kirk asked mildly. No problem. Chase was just leaving. Chase looked between us, calculating his odds and clearly not liking the math. This isn't over. Oh, but it is, I said, standing up. You see, I've got copies of every email, every photo, every receipt from every hotel room you two shared. And if I hear that you've so much as texted my wife, all of that goes to your mother, along with your browser history from the office computer. His face went white. You can't. I can. And I will. I smiled, and it felt like baring teeth. Now get off my property before I call the police and report you for trespassing. He left without another word, the smell of rotting shrimp trailing behind him like a toxic cloud. Kirk clapped me on the shoulder. Feel better? Getting there, I said, echoing my earlier text to Mira. But we're not done yet. The warehouse by the river had been abandoned for years, its windows broken and walls covered in graffiti. It was the perfect place for what I had planned. Isolated enough for privacy, but accessible enough for the audience I intended to attract. I'd spent the morning setting up, running extension cords for the speakers, and testing the audio equipment I'd borrowed from a client. The acoustics in the main room were surprisingly good, which would make everything that much more effective. Lewis, Adrian's assistant, had been surprisingly easy to turn. A few drinks at Murphy's, some carefully planted suggestions about office loyalty, and he'd handed over recordings of Mira and Chase planning their next move against me. They're going to try to frame you, he'd warned, sliding the flash drive across the bar. Something about recording you in a rage, making you look unstable. They think it'll help in the divorce. Perfect. Let them come. I sent the messages at noon, each one carefully crafted to bring exactly the right people to exactly the right place. To Mira. Meet me at the old Riverside warehouse at 8 p.m. Time to settle this like adults. Come alone. To Chase. Your girlfriend needs backup tonight. Riverside warehouse, 8 p.m. Don't let her face me alone. To Celine. Want to see how this story ends. Riverside warehouse, 8 p.m. Bring popcorn. To Adrian, Tasha, and half the PR firm's staff. Anonymous tip. Big drama going down tonight at Riverside warehouse, 8 p.m. Former employee Mira Keaston and Chase Duvall planning something interesting. By 7:45, I was ready. The speakers were positioned around the main room. connected to my laptop and the audio files Louis had provided. I'd set up a few chairs for the audience I knew would show up. People in this business couldn't resist a good show. Mira arrived first, looking nervous but determined. She'd dressed carefully, jeans and a sweater, trying to look approachable and vulnerable. The wronged wife seeking reconciliation. "Landon?" Her voice echoed in the empty space. "Where are you?" I stepped out of the shadows, noting how she flinched when she saw me. "Right here. Thanks for coming." "We need to talk. Really talk, without all the games and the revenge plots." "Oh, we'll talk. But first, let's wait for your backup." Her face went pale. "What backup? I came alone, like you asked." "Did you?" "That's interesting, because I specifically invited Chase too." As if summoned by his name, Chase appeared in the doorway, looking around nervously. He'd changed cars, probably rented something to avoid the lingering smell, and wore the expression of a man walking into a trap but unable to see the wires. "Mira, what's going on?" "I don't know," she said, but her eyes were already calculating, looking for exits. "I'll tell you what's going on," I said, pulling out my phone. "We're going to have that talk Mira wanted, all of us together." I hit play on the first audio file, and suddenly the warehouse filled with the sound of Mira's voice. "He's pathetic, Chase, completely clueless. We could probably dance naked in front of him, and he'd think we were rehearsing for a play." Chase's voice responded, "Maybe we should just tell him, get it over with." "Are you insane? Do you know how much money he makes? I'm not giving up half of everything just to spare his feelings. We stick to the plan, make him look unstable, get it on record, then file for divorce and take him for everything." The recording continued, laying out their scheme in devastating detail. How they'd planned to provoke me into a rage, record it, then use it as evidence of emotional abuse. How Mira had been slowly isolating me from friends and family, building a case for her own victimhood. "Turn it off," Mira whispered, her face ashen. "But we're just getting to the good parts," I said, skipping to another file. Chase's voice filled the warehouse. "What if he finds out about us?" "He won't. He's too weak to do anything about it, even if he did. That's why I married him instead of someone like you. He's safe, predictable, easily controlled." "Stop," Chase said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Oh, we're just getting started." That's when I heard the cars pulling up outside, right on schedule. Celine entered first, elegant even in the industrial setting, followed by Adrian and a small crowd of PR firm employees. Tasha brought up the rear, her phone already out and recording. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "welcome to the Mira and Chase show. Please, take a seat. We're just getting to the finale." I played the last recording, the one where they discussed their backup plan if the emotional abuse angle didn't work. "We could always plant something on his computer," Chase suggested. "Make it look like he's been accessing inappropriate sites. Ruin his business reputation." "Perfect," Mira agreed. "By the time we're done with him, he'll be lucky to get work fixing computers at the mall." The warehouse fell silent except for the echo of their recorded voices. Mira was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Chase looked like he wanted to disappear into the concrete floor. "Well," Selene said into the silence, "this is certainly more entertaining than most office parties." I walked over to where Mira stood trembling and looked her in the eye. 4 months you froze me out. 4 months of lies and manipulation and making me feel like I was losing my mind. You wanted to take everything from me, my money, my business, my reputation, my sanity. Landon, please. You called me weak, pathetic, easily controlled. I smiled, and it felt like ice. How's that working out for you now? I turned to address the crowd that had gathered. For those keeping score at home, Mira here has been fired from her job for conducting an affair with a coworker. Her credit cards are canceled, her access to our joint accounts is frozen, and her reputation in this industry is now somewhere below pond scum. "You can't do this," she sobbed. "It's cruel." "Cruel? You were going to frame me for abuse. You were going to plant evidence on my computer. You were going to destroy my life and take everything I'd worked for." I shook my head. "This isn't cruel. This is justice." Chase tried to edge toward the exit, but Kirk, who'd been waiting outside, blocked his path. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "We're not done yet." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. "Your browser history from the office computer. Very interesting reading. I wonder what your mother would think about your recreational activities." "You're insane," he whispered. "No, I'm thorough. There's a difference." I turned back to Mira, who was still crying. "You want to know the really beautiful part? I didn't have to lie about anything. I didn't have to plant evidence or manipulate anyone. I just had to let people see who you really are. Celine stood and began applauding slowly. "Bravo, Landon. Truly impressive." Adrian looked uncomfortable, but not entirely unsympathetic. "I think we've all seen enough here." As the crowd began to disperse, I heard the whispered conversation starting. "Did you hear what she said about him? I can't believe they were planning to frame him. That's sociopathic behavior. Poor guy. How long has this been going on?" Mira grabbed my arm as I walked past her. "Please, Landon, I'm sorry. I made mistakes, but we can work through this." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her tear-streaked face. "You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." I gently removed her hand. "Goodbye, Mira. Enjoy your new life." As I walked out of the warehouse, I could hear her sobbing behind me. Chase was arguing with someone on his phone, probably his mother, based on the panicked tone. Outside, Selene was waiting by her car. "That was quite a performance," she said. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "It wasn't a performance. It was the truth," she smiled. "The best revenge usually is." I watched as the last of the cars pulled away, leaving Mira and Chase alone in the warehouse with the wreckage of their plans. Tomorrow, the story would spread through the industry like wildfire. By the end of the week, neither of them would be employable in this city. I got in my car and drove home to my empty house. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like peace.